How high can your rent raise go? A Valley man says he got this notice. The rent would go from about $1,500 to $4,000 a month for this property. And if he's outside a lease and still staying there, there's a day rate to live here, about $260 a day or close to $8,000 a month. There is no law in Nevada limiting any rent raises, and the landlord's family says this is what they're asking. This is their right to name the price. The tenant's attorney says he is fighting it.
Our industry was shut down for almost 18 months straight, like no shows at all.
For those who work in live entertainment in Las Vegas, for 2 years, so many workers like Derek could barely make it and barely afford rent. At this home in the West Valley near Hualapai and Desert Inn, rent came out to roughly $1,500 a month. Unemployment through PUA went a long way to pay rent. Last fall, then came the notice many renters dread. How much will rent go up?
Raising the rent from $1,535 to $4,000.
When you saw that, what'd you think?
I laughed. Literally, I laughed out loud. This has got to be a joke. Who does this? How does this happen?
Derek says no neighbors are paying anywhere close to that. A Zillow search has a suggested monthly rate for the home, $2,100 a month. On another rental notice from the landlord, it states the holdover fees, or rate outside the lease, $263 a day. That would send rent soaring to around $8,000 a month for this house. Derek says there's no way he wants to stay here at all.
But I would have moved 6 months ago, but to move right now, it'll cost you to get into a house $6,000, $8,000.
In December, the landlord's relative who manages the property says she sent an eviction notice. Derek applied for CHAP, federal rent assistance, through Clark County. He says CHAP referred him to Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada.
We didn't agree to the $4,000. I would argue the provision doubling the rent is unconscionable. This was a unilateral decision by the landlord. He couldn't agree to that amount of money, and it would be unreasonable to do so.
What the attorney for legal aid tells me they're looking at is this clause in Derek's lease. It says right here, during a holdover not authorized by the landlord, rent shall increase by 100%. So the attorney's arguing here that if a judge looks at this and agrees to it, wouldn't rent be $3,000, not $4,000? But the property manager and family members says this is an old lease. The property manager declined to answer this one question. How can anyone afford that high of a rent raise? In a very lengthy email, she says, if a tenant doesn't want to pay what is being asked in order to rent a property, they don't have to rent it. No one is obligating anyone to rent a property they cannot afford. Rent is $4,000 a month, and in holdover, it does double at that rate. The landlord's an elderly senior citizen. It's been made clear to the tenant that we need the property back. This is about the health and well-being of an elderly lady going blind who just wants to move back into a house she owns. CHAP can pay the increased rent, or $4,000 a month, based on the actual lease terms. It's really a shame CHAP is the reason for causing all of these problems when they're supposed to be here helping. Correspondence from CHAP to Derek says the program offered the family $3,000 a month. She told them and tells me she won't accept it.
I know that my case, as far as rent being doubled, is special. Conversely, I know that there are thousands of people here in Las Vegas dealing with significant increases that they can't afford.